we'll get that done. There we are.
Is there a number to have it up, Shane? All right, I'd like to motion to open the zoning board of appeals.
Motion.
Vote aye. Okay, meeting is now open. All right, so we don't have any public hearings, so that's easy. We're gonna do we're going to do the application review, decision review of Scary. So, we're just gonna vote on whether or not what the lawyer said is correct.
The resolution is a writing of the previous decision.
Yes.
Your vote is whether or not to adopt this as your writing.
Yes, so we're voting to do that. I'd like the motion to vote.
Second.
Okay, so, all right,
I apologize, just for I'm still learning names. Can I just get your name?
Cody.
Cody, thank you, sorry. Okay, sorry, Sean.
no problem. So, we are going to, vote.
Yeah, do you wanna do a name call?
Yeah, we can do it. You want to do it? Yeah, we can do a name. call.
Yeah, don't have the list in front of me, my apologies, so, if you.
I vote to approve.
Yeah,
Sean O'Sullivan,
okay.
vote to approve. We have name tags too somewhere. I think
Okay.
they're in that.
Are they in that file?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
And I'm sorry, it's still first CBA meeting, so I'm still learning here.
it's okay. And there's only one that would work, only mine and Cody's, because everyone
Yeah.
else's doesn't.
Yeah.
Okay, Ian?
Ian Reichenberger, vote to approve.
Robbie Gazy, vote to approve.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we're done with that. All right, that one was easy. Okay, so now we're going to vote, I motion to vote on the application review, decision review on the Wells Fargo property. Got a motion, second, okay, all right, so we'll go through.
I can call the names.
Okay, awesome,
Cody,
Approve.
Sean,
approve,
Ian,
approve,
and Robert.
approve.
Thank you.
All right, so those two people, you guys are done. Oh, they already left, that was bad. Oh, they left, oh, that's good, okay.
Just signed resolution. They'll sign it tonight, then to Nicole tomorrow and probably by the end of the week. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Have a nice night.
All right, so, we'd now like to hear from the 31 Water Street, 11 Water Street, sorry, 11 Water Street. Could you guys come up and tell us what your deal is?
Yes, so,
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, I'm Jesse Halliburton, managing member of, Ward Street Trail. And, so we had made a change in our plan, to, eliminate a restaurant and an event space that we thought was going to become a parking problem. And because the Gateway District language and the SLA public having to have a restaurant open to the public, they didn't work well together. So we ended up with a 9-seat restaurant, which would have enabled us to have 3 parking spaces. Because I think it was three patrons per parking space, so we had 9 spaces. With the assumption that most of our people were going to be coming to our restaurant from the actual hotel, which was 26 rooms. And the planning board then gave us a waiver based on land banking, one space. Actually, it was originally 3 spaces, but because of the specific gateway parameters, they are looking for landscaping at the front of our property. To kind of, shield the cars that are in the parking lot that exist now. And, there were two spaces that were gonna be land banked at the front, and then there was one that was also gonna be land banked, that we made into a loading zone. And when we decided to eliminate the event space and the restaurant, because of the potential future parking problem, we added 2 rooms. And what we were able to do is we took the 1 space back, which got us to 31 spaces. The waiver that they had originally gave us was for 3 spaces. And the one that was in the particular loading zone could have been activated at any time if there was going to be a problem with, the comings and goings of parking, or patrons during, the general public during the times that the hotel was mainly occupied. Now, this was all based on an occupancy of 70% across the entire year. On the weekends, we're usually in the high 80s and early 90s in occupancy, and during the week, it would have been a lower percentage of 50 to 60% is typically what we run on. These studies were all done based on obviously we had our a traffic engineer, and he did the full study on it. I think that was also made available to you guys. Additionally, we gave our history of the other hotel that we run in Woodstock, and that's where we were able to give a good history of occupancy versus cars that come to the property, versus people that actually come from the bus that travels this area. So the long and short of it is the event space we would like to turn into 2 additional rooms. So that parking, then we have 31 spaces. We would be required 32.2 spaces, but obviously we round up to 33. And we're asking for 2 parking spaces to be forgiven.
How many rooms are in the hotel?
There'll be 28.
28, so.
I mean, there are 26 that are currently approved with a restaurant
Mhm.
and an event space,
Okay,
or a meeting space, meeting events.
And
Yeah.
getting rid of the event space and restaurant only cleared for 2 additional rooms, or that's just what you decided to add? Or?
Yeah, and then also the parking.
Okay.
The
so all
parking,
three-
we're not trying to, ask for more than,
Right, so did the footprint of the building change?
no, it didn't, no.
Okay,
so you have 28 rooms,
so I'm
so
just curious what
what's the,
a restaurant and an event space take up more space than 2 rooms?
yeah,
Well, we have a gym. I mean, we're converting some of the space to a
Okay.
gym and wellness.
That was what my
For the people but the event space in and of itself was about 900 or so square feet.
Okay.
So we put that in, we
More
put that into 2
Yeah,
rooms, right? Like a meeting space, like we were, the whole plan was to have like company retreats, people would come during the week.
like a conference hall.
That's right, and be able to use that space, but the question that we asked ourselves based on an inquiry, that we had at our hotel in Woodstock was, what happens if somebody takes out the entire block of the rooms, right? In this case, it would be 26 at that particular approval. And they then wanted to have a wedding, but it was gonna be off-site. And this is a real case that happened recently with Woodstock. But then we asked ourselves the question, if they wanted to have a rehearsal dinner, they could have a rehearsal dinner and all patrons from the hotel would be able to you know, go to that rehearsal dinner. But then what happens if they invited guests from outside of the hotel?
So-
That's when we started thinking, wow, we don't want to be in a situation where
So
we end
almost,
up.
yeah, your restrictions of space made it where it might not even be reasonable.
I mean, the simple solution could have been, we could have just put a lot full sign out, but then that would have then pushed everybody to other places to park. And I know that could have become a
That's a
problem.
weird corner too, like
Right.
where it is. There's not like a lot of street parking there to begin with.
And that's right too. And, you know, with the parking areas across the street, you know, they're very clearly marked not to park there. And I know there's a there's a roaming tow truck that takes those people out. So
Right.
Yeah.
we didn't want to have that situation.
So I know the residential, for like a residential, you need two, you need one, you need one
One per.
one slot per room. So I'm wondering why 20, how many rooms are there?
Well, there were 26, that's what our approval was, with three,
So there's no like 2-bedroom ones or?
No.
So it's just straight up hotel?
that's right.
Okay, so why, I don't understand, if 28. You should need like 29 or 30 spots, like you should be okay.
Yeah, except that, you know, there's a stipulation on employees and
Okay.
for employee parking.
Right.
So
Okay,
we would need, based on the information, we have to provide 3 employee spaces per 20 rooms.
Per 20 rooms.
Right, so if you do the
That's
math,
your point,
it goes to 4.2
4.2.
with 28 rooms.
that's a weird,
Um,
that's a clunky.
how many of those have to be handicapped
I believe it's 2 and we have those.
out of the?
Yeah,
Okay.
and we have those 2 for sure.
How many employees do you envision being there?
You know, I mean, it's gonna vary. Sometimes there's gonna be, you know, like, for example, during the day, when there's not a lot of people around, you know, or people are checked out, they usually check out at 11 o'clock and they check in at 3. So cars move off site at that point, right? Then our employees, so where we'll be highest with our employees is gonna be during housekeeping hours, during that 11 to 3 period. And then, you know, when the laundry will be gone, and then, you know, at night, there'll probably be a need, there'd be less of a need for parking for employees, so. I think four spaces is enough, I'd like to believe that, but, you know, it's.
How many rooms is the hotel in Woodstock?
23.
And there's one person at night? Or-
Yeah, actually in Woodstock, we, you know, we close at 7 and we have people on call, but that's it. Here, it'll be different.
Right.
Yeah.
But in your plans are to have 1 or 2 at night?
Yes.
So the 33 rooms, sorry, the 33 spots, is that based on the 26 rooms or the 28 rooms?
28. And actually, it was 33 for the restaurant. Because we only had 26 rooms, so we didn't have to provide that additional parking space that's, we're talking about the 0.2% that rounds up. And we had 3 spaces for the restaurant. And that was 33 spaces. And those originally, when we presented our plan, we presented it with the 2 parking spaces at the front of the property. That, again, the planning board, you know, in the gateway language explicitly says that, you know, we want landscaping to kind of block that.
Right.
Now, this hotel also will have a living roof. We also are working with Ryan Cronin to, you know, the hatched areas in front of this building. We're gonna do mural on the actual pavement. Because the planning board did not really like the fact that it was just a hatched area, and I, you know, thought, why don't we just contact Ryan, maybe we could do some street art in the parking lot, and that seemed to apply pretty nicely. But, you know, to finish the thought, they were okay with our 30 spaces based on getting rid of those 2 spaces at the front, and creating this nice landscaped area. And then giving us that one in that loading zone, that the loading zone that we could always activate at a later time if it became a problem.
So the 31 that. 32 point something required,
So now, because we're adding the 2 rooms,
right?
right?
It's 28 for the
It's
rooms,
28 for the rooms,
4 point for the
2
staff,
for the staff. Yeah.
so. And one of those is the alternate loading dock of your current 31.
Yeah, so we've activated that one, so that's 31.
Okay,
What we're asking for a variance is for 2.
and your study indicates 90% on weekends,
Roughly.
roughly,
Yeah.
obviously, there's influxes and that kind of thing, so. 90% of the 28, so. In theory, you would have to be at full capacity with the full staff there in order to meet 33 rooms.
Right.
Do you think you're gonna get people biking from the city and stopping?
I do. And in fact, I think we're gonna end up with people coming in from the bus as they do in Woodstock.
Okay.
To that note, because it is a part of the Empire, or at least close enough to the Empire Trail.
Oh, yeah.
And also a decent day's ride from the beginning of it, having done it, that is a logical
Stop flexing.
thing.
That's a great.
It's just my
Wait,
natural.
wait, you rode from New York City, huh?
I've done it the opposite way.
Oh, wow.
And then bumped back up.
Awesome.
But my point is that this thing is popular now.
You're right.
the Empire Trail, and it's going to be broken into day rides, so.
Well, interesting you bring that up. We are hosting, you've heard of Backroads? Okay, so Backroads, that's a group that, has taken out blocks of our rooms for their riders in Woodstock. And I think that this is just gonna be
Here
another
in the
great
Woodstock.
spot, yeah.
So anyway, the whole, that seemed like a circle, but are there bike racks in this?
Oh, yeah. In fact, I think we have more bike racks and in fact, we're gonna have storage area inside now as well for bicycles. And I think we have, I wanna say 12 spaces
Yeah.
per bike.
Having traveled with bikes.
Yeah,
When they have a room for your bike as opposed to taking it up to the room,
it's nice.
it's so nice, and also bikes fall and damage things.
Yeah. That's
And
great.
as a hotel owner, I think you could probably make a nice racking system that could, like, even if it just hooks on the ceiling,
Yeah.
the people would be very willing to let you store them and not, because when they're in the room, I went cross country with 3 bikes.
Oh, wow.
When I stayed in the hotel, it was a nightmare,
Yeah,
because you had bikes everywhere, and then your choice is you leave your nice bike on the car locked up, or you bring it in.
Right.
It was.
yeah, no, I could see it. Yeah, I'm a mountain biker and,
Yeah.
I have that same thought, like, do
Yeah.
I leave it? I don't really wanna leave my bike on the car, like, I don't know necessarily where we are,
Yeah,
but yes, we will have storage for bikes inside and, we do plan to make bikes available to our guests. So that they can go out on the rail trail and enjoy,
And there's rentals near. but-
Yeah, there are rentals, which we will, one way or another, we'll end up patronizing. I've done a lot of business with these guys over the years, so.
Do you have a sense of in Woodstock, what percentage of your room rentals are from people that are taking the bus up?
So when we originally did our study, when we were going before the planning board, then it was like 15 to 20%. Right, but that was that was like less rooms. It wasn't, I think at the time we had 4 rooms, so. And, the bus drops people right off in the center of town and they are able to just walk over, similar to how it is here.
Um,
and you have any questions? No, I'm all good. Okay, all right, we're good, okay, thank you. So you're gonna have to do a whole bunch of stuff, you have to notify the neighbors. You have to post a sign.
Yeah.
He'll help you with that.
Yeah.
So as long as you do that, next week we'll have a public hearing, once we have a public hearing, then we vote on it, and then we just wait a month and you get the written.
Mr. Chair, are you setting a public hearing for next month?
No, I was just telling them the process, I was about to do that.
So just to add note, if that is what ended up what we end up doing, just make sure you follow those instructions closely, because otherwise it'll set everything.
Well, yeah, we've done it. We did it with the planning board. It's,
Okay.
yeah, it's a pink notice. We put it on the building. Yeah, we're well versed.
Okay, cool. We haven't been before, so.
No, absolutely. No,
Okay.
I want to do it to the letter for sure.
Okay, so do you have any questions or any other things you want to add?
No, I don't think so. Unless you guys have any questions I can answer.
Sounds like a nice project.
It's gonna be.
And anything on the rail trail that's gonna encourage people to use it, I sort of have a soft spot.
Yeah, and well, I'll add one other thing. It's like in Woodstock, we don't have a restaurant there either. And so we send all of our guests to all the local restaurants, which you have plenty of local restaurants here. So having one, we don't necessarily need it. So we want to push everybody to the restaurants that are in town. And the nice thing about it is they don't have to get in their car.
Yeah,
So when they're here, they're less likely to get in their car because they could just walk right into town. So,
Well, once they have one of your 31 parking spaces.
yeah.
Well, they're not gonna give it up.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
I also like how you integrated the trail into it and made like ways that it looked like it was gonna be very easy to get off the trail onto the thing. That was.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, we went through that and, the planning board, wanted to have a sidewalk all the way around, even the front side of our property, which is great. And then at the back side, we're gonna actually incorporate what railroad tracks are still left on our site into, an area that we can do some interpretive signage and explain what was there in the past,
Right.
working with the Welcome Valley Land Trust. Yeah.
Cool. You're good? Okay, so I'd like to motion for a public hearing at the next meeting, which would be
July 9th.
July 9th. Thank you.
Motion?
Okay, vote. Aye. Okay, passes unanimously. All right, thank you.
Excellent.
The next time, I please bring like some plans,
Size plan.
full-size plans,
I will.
because like I went through it and looked at the little pictures.
Okay.
But if people from the public are here, it
Yeah,
would be very important to have that. so that they-
100%. And I also have renderings too. So
Yeah, that would be, renderings are even better than
Yeah.
plans. We like plans, everyone else likes renderings.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, gentlemen,
Thank you.
thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Just add one quick question. For you. Did the planning board indicate, I didn't see it in the minutes, if you secure the variance, do you need to go back to them or did they say?
They had suggested that I come see the zoning board
Okay.
and then,
I'll follow.
yeah, okay. And it was a change with, we lost a lot,
Yeah.
unfortunately, so.
I'll find it.
Okay, thank you. Oh, can you send me,
Yeah.
what I need to?
So it's-
Okay.
That'll
Thank you so much.
that'll come tomorrow with the next day.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, have a nice day.
Mike, good idea, we do need to know that because seeker and things like.
Exactly, that's what I wanted to find out, see if I'm still applied.
I think it's going to.
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean, it would be-
I don't think that's what they
No,
want
it wouldn't.
there.
If it's-
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
They're looking for a setback, if it's been setback,
Right.
the distance for parking space.
Yeah, you're right.
Water.
Or alternative number of hotel rooms.
Yeah,
Pretty cool thing.
Yeah.
Just-
I will confirm that.
Yeah, that's true, yeah. All right, so. So now, well. Sorry, 149, 151, Chestnut Street, come on down. Do you need an easel? Oh, you do, okay, we have one over here, but that's great.
Good evening, Alec Ladd from Huddy and Spader on behalf of the applicant, and Mike Bodendorf from Hudson Light Design, who is a civil engineer. Give Mike a second. while I jump in.
I heard that you like plans, so I'll put the plan instead of the render.
Yeah.
All right, so we are here this evening to appeal the code enforcement officer's determination that we need side yard setback variances for this project on the north and south of the building. Or in the alternative, if you don't agree with our interpretation requests, the 2 side yard setback variances that I just noted, so.
Okay.
Is this a joint application here for?
It's
the appeal and the variances, or is this just the, I understood it's just the appeal?
So to clarify, we received both applications, but in reviewing it with Alex, the municipal code officer. And my determination will review the appeal first, because if you secure the appeal, then you don't need the variance.
Of course.
If you do not secure the appeal, then we will move forward with the variance. But we're not gonna do them simultaneously. We're doing the appeal,
And then,
and then if the appeal is successful or not successful, that would then trigger.
So basically for the appeal.
Are you a lawyer?
yes, I am.
Okay, so when I went through it, the form was filled out, see attached, see attached, see attached, see attached.
There was a revised.
There was a revised one, but did you fill out the form for the, did you fill out the form for the building inspector one? Because I did not see that. I saw the one. I was very confused on this because when I was reading through it, it was the zoning board, you wanted appeal, and I did see one form that was not filled out, which upset me, but then I saw another form that was filled out, so then I was like, okay, but the title didn't make any sense. I will say that we've had 3 zoning board of appeal things happen, none of them have worked. If you want to spend 3 months chasing that down for us to probably shoot it down like we always do, you're more than welcome to do and push your project back. The other one has a really much better chance of success.
You mean the variance?
The variance, we've given many variances for this. I know as a lawyer, you probably like to do as many of these papers as possible to, you know, because you want to be thorough. But I'm gonna recommend that unless you have 6 months you want to burn, to not do that.
Okay,
You might want to confer with your client for 5 seconds and figure that out. But that, because
I think the client would be in favor of timing over.
yeah, agreed. Yeah, and I'm just covering for my colleagues, so I can't answer your
I can-
your forum question.
I can explain the rationale for that, and what Chair is saying basically is you have a much better chance on the variance, in his view, than on the appeal. And the reason is, with the position, if you were taking the appeal, you're essentially saying that the building inspector is wrong, the building inspector decided that you needed a variance, and when he's really favoring the written code instead of the table.
Yeah.
There's a number of reasons why that's probably in the view of the chair, and, you know, depending whatever happens here, I don't want to prejudice it, but that would be the more instinctive view. Because this is the downtown business district. We're looking to minimize in general, the distance between the buildings, so it makes sense. Given the clear disagreement where they both can't be right, but they're diametrically opposed, it makes more sense that it is a maximum setback. And so, and this board has given variances to other buildings in the same situation.
Yeah, so understood.
I don't like arguing against.
Was that correct?
The definition of the code.
Yeah.
Variance is cut and dry, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Comparable.
we've never had, I've been on this board for 10 years maybe, and we've never had one work. And they've cost the client a lot of money because they do. So-
Yeah, appeals.
The ones that appeal, yeah, they always run out of their escrow. They owe us money for them.
I just asked the client the question. He is on Zoom. I don't know if we could let him chime in.
Sure.
Um,
Hello,
Yeah.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, hi, good evening.
Buddy, so we have 2 routes we can take. The first one, Al, do you want to explain it?
Yeah, sure. So the first one is like just an appeal of the determination that we need a side yard setback variance. Or in the alternative, we can just proceed with the variance relief that the code enforcement officer is saying that we need. And what the board is basically telling us now is that their preference is to proceed just with the variance approval. I believe we've submitted everything that we need for that.
You've got both applications in, right? So there's
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
statute of limitations.
Yeah, so in the interest of time and basically the direction of the board that they've given us tonight, which I think we should follow, is just to proceed with the area variance aspect of the project, because they're saying, although we filed for a request for an interpretation, or in the alternative, the variance, that their procedure is to either just go forward with the interpretation, see where that goes, and then switch to the variance, which obviously lengthens the amount of time that we would be before the ZBA. So we're just looking for your input or confirmation that we should proceed with just the area variance.
Yes, of course. I would certainly follow the board's advice without a doubt. And I appreciate their input and their candor on the matter.
Perfect.
All right. So now tell us what you want to do.
Yeah, sure. So just to start with a, I guess, general project overview to kind of set the scene for the variance request. So this is a 3-story mixed-use building. On the first floor facing North Chestnut Street, we'll have about 7,400 square feet of retail. And then the rest of the building is made up of 124 residential units. And as noted, this is in the NBR zoning district. And the total lot area is 4.7 acres. And it's just north of the Agway redevelopment project, just this out there off the site plan. And we're actually about like a third of a mile north of the Zero Place development as well. So we submitted to the plan. Yeah, so we submitted to the planning board in March, and we appeared at their April 16th meeting. And I wasn't at that meeting, but my colleague tells me that the planning board generally voiced some support for what we're trying to accomplish with this proposed site plan. So the relief that we need is, as noted, your code permits a maximum of 15 feet for side yard setbacks. The plan that we're showing you has a 70-foot setback to the north, and then a 50-foot setback, or 58-foot setback to the south. And our justification for the proposed site layout and for the variance requested is that, and the primary one is that the New York State Fire Code for 3-story buildings requires 2 points of access. And they also require that they be located at certain spots on the property as well. So that, we believe, we are showing a plan that aligns with the New York State Fire Code requirements. And also with this current plan, it allows us to maintain the desired pedestrian-friendly streetscape in front of the building, as opposed to an alternative design that may not require variances, would require us to push the building farther back in the site and put some of the parking right up on the street front, which I think is an undesirable design for the front of the building. Also, under the current design, it does allow us to provide some open space in the middle of the 2 wings of the building for use of the residents.
So, if I may, the bottom line is that the reason why you would need, for example, a 70-foot variance on one side is the combination of the required access for the fire code, as well as a couple of spaces that you would need because of the lot configuration.
Yes, that's correct.
It was 70 north and
58 to the 58 feet on the south. And actually,
and that is at the farthest point that I'm seeing there, because obviously that
yes, I
road
think it's,
curve.
yeah, the farthest point of the building to the lot line, and then the same on the south.
And that's these spaces are including these parking lots.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's
What is the distance from the edge of the parking lot to the property line?
North or?
Well, eventually both.
I would say to the north, 26, 5 and 5. So you're looking at about 34 feet where the dimension line goes through it, but it's angled, so it varies.
Yeah.
South side, the edge of the parking is about 6 feet off the property line. There's also a stream on the north side and an old bridge. I think 32 might have
So part
one
of,
time.
part of the necessary distance on the north side is to stay clear of the stream.
yes, correct.
So
If we were to
be able to
expand
put that access in there between the stream and the.
So you're only asking for, this is when I was reading this was what I wasn't clear on. So you're asking for the north and the south. You're asking for more space than the 15 feet. The building seems rather further back off the road than all the other buildings. So is that another exception you're asking for? Is that allowed by the code? Because that looks really far back.
The curve makes it.
It's the curve and
At
it,
this point, close, right, at this southern point?
because I thought that was supposed to be 15 feet off the.
So there's a couple things going on with this, and we have had conversations with the planning board and the zoning administrator about the front setback, and
Yeah.
they seem to be comfortable, it's under the discretion of the planning board to allow that. As long as there's a reason for it, we're providing a public space in the
Okay.
front, and you also notice that the property line does a little jog here.
Oh.
So I don't know why that is, it's gotta be some reason for the DOT.
Well, we'll probably cut straight and then they.
There's probably two lots.
So, yeah, and there used to be a triangular lot here too, that probably was associated with the old road.
With the road curve.
Yeah.
So is this an application for an area variance for the front as well?
No, so we believe,
For the size.
yeah, so we believe we comply with all requirements of code, and actually your density control schedule for the front yard. It has a note which simply just says sufficient space to allow for construction of sidewalks and related pedestrian amenities, and that's what we're trying to accomplish
Isn't that big?
with that front space. Is like that pedestrian amenity space, and we have a rendering of that on the other side of the board if you want to see it.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if we can see a rendering if you have it. At this time.
Is there gonna be a curb between the cars and the bike path? Or are you
The
gonna rely on
on-street
people?
parking you're talking about?
Yeah,
No, there's a little painted strip in there.
yeah, then they're not gonna work. They're gonna park right on it. They park on the street in New Paltz.
So we do have an application into the DOT, they're reviewing that now. We don't have any comments from them. Another thing that we're speculating, we're proposing 2 ingress egress entrances. The DOT required the Agway development, as you can see to the south of the building here in the lower rendering. They required them to have a full access to the south and rights in, rights out only on their north end. We're sort of expecting that they may ask the same for us there. Which kind of furthers the need to have those 2 paths around the building, because you'll have to be able to go left out of one of those entrances. We're not sure if they're gonna allow that parking along the frontage yet. I believe that Agway went for that and they shot that down, they shot down the bike path, but
Do you
we're
need
just not
that?
sure yet.
Do you need those spaces to make it work?
We would like to have them.
I mean, as far as like your.
We would still be parking compliant under the shared parking calculation. Right now, we're parking compliant full.
Right,
If we remove those spaces, we would still have enough. If you applied that parking, the shared parking calculation.
And are you gonna have,
We require 168, we have 168. That number goes down to like 146 perhaps. 140 would be the number if you applied the shared parking calculation.
the 7,000 square feet space, is that the front of the building, or is it the front of the building from the front to the back completely? Or is it,
It's the front of the ground floor of the front of the building.
so it goes, so you can go, it goes completely through,
Um,
or is there apartments on the back of it?
there are apartments on the back.
So it's only the front, how many feet, how deep are those?
I would say it's probably half of the building, and the building depth is.
It's not a lot of shopping, it looks like a lot of shopping.
well, it's long,
Yeah, it's long, but it's,
what's now I don't have the other.
yeah, that's why.
The building depth is around 60, the architect knows. Interior, the left hand.
Yeah, if you have a overview, yeah, I'd like to look at it.
Yeah, here I go.
Right.
I'm small, but you can keep that as well.
And they're able to tell. Small sheets, I didn't really.
So Mike, I just got a question, just to kind of clarify.
Yes.
The 70 feet on the north side,
So it's
the reasons
is 1, 2.
you're asking for a variance is, I think you said something along, the fire code was one reason.
Correct.
Well, the fire code means that tells them they need to have ingress on both sides.
Right, but to plan for fire apparatus, is that,
Well, they're trying to maximize the amount.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, because
They're
it's
trying to minimize
three-story.
the amount.
Okay, and then, you also said something about a stream on the north side.
Yeah, there's a
It's like,
stream.
the whole idea is that the whole bottom floor is supposed to be like 0 space, you know, like the whole bottom floor.
Okay.
And so
There's a culvert under the street right here, and the stream runs through. There's an old bridge here that we're just gonna leave in place because we don't know what the disposition of it, who owns it, you know, so that, the extent of that bridge probably comes out to about here. We need to be able to fit transformers in there. We have a water line coming in.
Are you going to, access the rail trail?
We are considering it, yes. It's not necessarily on the plan yet, but if the planning board, if they want.
Because that's like that's an area where there's a lot of space where there's no access. I mean, even to your stores, like people would, if there's a coffee shop in there,
Right,
they would really appreciate.
yeah.
It'd be much easier to rent the professional space if there's access to the rail trail.
So. On the south is Bagway. Property.
Correct. Yes. So Agway's here, Bosse's is right here. Do you know when you're going down the road?
No, I know where they are. I'm trying to picture what we approved.
Well, the board should also be aware that not only is Zero Place well to the south, but there are two also mixed use buildings.
Yeah, we had
get
to-
variances, similar variants that are south of this at 137 and
And-
145.
Yeah, we already
Yeah.
did that, right? Yeah.
So you're getting.
So
South of this, you're getting.
that's what I'm trying, the one that's directly south, did we give a northern variance to it? Oh, do you recall?
Well, we gave them whatever variances they asked for and for exactly the same reason. In fact, and one of the two, either 137, 145 also had a stream that that was.
Yeah, they had some protect, like.
I think it might have been
marsh-
137,
marsh-
But they had wetland.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they had
exactly.
wetland, Yeah,
So. Both.
I guess my thought process is just that. The area variant, the way that was written was to keep everything relatively continuous and to not have big open spaces. And with. Right, the two parking lots butting up to each other.
We're starting to get into.
Were
the-
that, like, not to, that rendering looked like a big open space on, you know, like,
Yeah.
it's hard to not look at that.
And setting aside the snafu the bulk table. And just looking at the rule, which is, 15-foot maximum, what we're seeing is, all these mixed use buildings are applying for variances because they've got.
Well, of course, because you have to have access.
They have to have the exits, and then in some cases there were streams, and in this case, they've got a little bit of extra parking they're using as well, so. Where the streetscape that was sought to be achieved by the rule is, you guys can make your own decision, but is it?
Well, but I mean, even for
But the
fire code, you need 30 foot on both sides.
Yeah, well, this is the only area.
So-
I'm not.
I don't think the
You need
intent,
access, does the access need to be 30 feet?
Yeah. in a convert- in a
I think the
three-story-
intent of this,
Or at least
the
that's what it's
setback
on.
requirements. They would work much better if we had a road behind our parcel that we could access from.
Right. 'cause
Then you could
Yeah,
basically connect buildings along that frontage, but this site, the Agway site, and even I think Zero Place probably doesn't have, they have a road on the south side and maybe
well, and there's one.
32, but they didn't.
South of that happening, and
It's something the village board should think about in terms of how this is playing out.
there really isn't, unless there was an access road connecting.
That
So
sort of
that
statutes really
these
don't
buildings
necessarily
could
comply
share
your project or align your project like this.
emergency
The
access.
15-foot setback wasn't,
Yeah.
and this project wasn't.
This is actually a bit of an
This is
improvement over
a
the
zone-
existing condition too, because on the south side, the existing building is 126 feet away. Now we're moving it to 58 feet, so we are moving the southern portion.
and what'd you do
Closer.
to change that?
It's just the length of the building is longer than
Right,
the whatever's there now.
and did that increase the commercial
Yes.
space because it's the front store?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I guess that the issue is that to me, like, yeah, you have, okay, so there's a little bit of parking space, but with the 24 or 30 foot required for the fire code access on both sides, like, there isn't a way to do it without needing a variance.
Well, I mean, they could get rid of those parking spaces on the south.
But then they have to draw the building.
Yeah, I mean, the building should be bigger. That would be the way to get the variance away. Like, the one on the north, I almost have a lot more sympathy for because
Yeah, that's weird.
that's weird and there's stuff, but the one on the south is unnecessary. Like, those 6 spots could go away, you make the building longer and you only need 1 variance versus 2. I mean,
Well,
you're.
more than 6 spots.
We still need the
Yeah.
access on the south.
I think
Yeah, no,
you're
I know that, but you have a whole bunch of parking spaces there that don't have to be there. They could be someplace else.
So you would have to.
And that would make the building longer. I mean, and then that would be more in compliance.
One of the things that the board has to consider for an area variance is whether it's the minimum variance necessary.
Yeah,
And in response to your question, this is a neighborhood development zone, so the concept is that it should, instead of typical suburban zoning where you have maximum setbacks because we keep things apart, in a neighborhood zone, you want it to look more like Main Street, right? So in fact, in this case, that's why they have a maximum setback, because you want the things to be close together. You want it to look like Main Street where you have all the buildings are kind of all scrunched together in an old city. And what we're finding is that they're trying to build buildings, like the buildings are good, but because of access rules and things like that, a couple of streams, we're seeing none of them being glommed together. Then again, in this case, they wouldn't be glommed together anyway, because he's not next to he's not next to 145, he's next to Agua, right? So in other words, the concept needs to be rethought because we're giving variances to every one of these, but for one reason or another.
We
So
look at the concept, we need to thought the concept of what they're doing or the concept of the stats, the concept of the stats.
well, they may need to do what they're doing. The question is how, now that we know we're not getting these buildings together, after just something else, like variance to the fire code or ordinance act or whatever, you have to want to address it. But
like this could be.
you have to address it anyway, because
So,
the reason why there's this
And then
confusion.
that.
The table is still written in terms of the minimum setback, so you just
Yeah.
kind of.
And then you get rid of the
suburban thing, your house is supposed to be so far from mine.
And that there-
Minimum setback. So if you put it in there, and that's why the two things are opposite, that's why.
The reason they don't want to do that is to
The table
build.
is wrong.
That's what they're trying to build, this design.
And
This
so
design
the
is designed with the minimal amount of retail and maximum amount.
separate, and what does the village board want to do about
I'm
it?
not so.
You're gonna grant them a variance.
yeah,
for some
I just want to clarify one thing. We would still need a variance for the south side, even if we got rid of those parking spaces, because we're only saving about 18 feet from
It'll be
removing.
small.
Yeah, but 18 feet in a walking neighborhood is huge. That's enormous. The whole idea here is you want to have the buildings close together so that people walk from building to building. You want people who are living in that structure to be walking to Zero Place to buy things. You want people in Zero Place to be walking to your structure to buy things. And the way you do that is by putting them close together. And on the north side, you've done a better job. On the south side, you've done a worse job. And
Well, in the
This-
north, that's actually more variance requests, but
Yeah.
there's
there's a reason for that.
those things seem. When we get to the question, like, is this self-created? Like,
Yeah.
I feel more strongly that that's,
Well, it's 5 factors, that's not secret.
oh, yeah, no, sorry.
It's 5
So,
factors.
when we talk about our 5
Well, the
factors,
other one, the code is the minimum variance necessary, which is actually outside the fire tractor, but that's something we have to do as well. This is the minimum necessary, given the building.
right, and so I guess without speaking too much on the matter, what I'm getting from Sean and kind of maybe some of our other questions is that the north, even though it's a larger number, has more things that are to be considered
Because of the stream.
because of the stream, because of the weird bridge thing, because of the fact that there's not another property.
North of
And with this board,
And then the property north of that is Bosse's, so that's never gonna go anywhere. So I'm not worried about that one.
Like having like a stretch of land there doesn't.
in other words, you're more concerned about bringing the building closer to the thing on the south.
Yes, because the problem is.
It's an awkward gap.
People from Bosse's aren't gonna be, Bosse's isn't gonna move, it's not gonna go anywhere, it's state property, that's gonna be Bosse's until I'm not gonna worry about it. The stuff that's happening below you to the south is gonna be walkable. And this building was designed to minimize the amount of retail space and maximize the amount of housing. So you've shortened the one thing that you don't like and you've made the things that you really like much bigger. And so the design, the architectural design is designed for that. You're putting all the construction going up to the backs is maximizing the amount of space. And I don't have too much of a problem with this, by the way. It's just what you did, but you're doing, I feel like you're doing it a little bit too much to the south. Like you should get some parking, figure out the parking thing, move that in a little bit closer.
I just looked at the fire access, the minimum unobstructed width is 26 feet.
26 feet
Yeah.
per boat.
Yeah,
Well-
and it's something like, I looked at the number.
Building, but it says the minimum.
Yeah, it's both.
It was-
International and.
It's
and-
30
I
feet
think
over.
30, right? For a 3-story, but that's not.
Yeah, you're way over like what's needed there, and I'm not, and I get it, I understand what you're trying to accomplish, but. Like, this is not,
Well, I
it's
think,
supposed to be close, and it's 59 feet. From the corner of the building to the property line, that's a lot,
yeah,
that's
so
a 30-something foot ask.
yeah, so I think, yeah, we're happy to look at removing those parking spaces, but we just gotta make sure that removing those, whatever, 6 to 10 parking spaces to bring the building closer doesn't create the need for an additional parking variance, because I think, if we don't get the space up front.
Or if it does, I
Still.
mean, this board would grant that variance, so the question is,
I would,
is the chair maybe saying that he'd rather grant the variance for 3 parking spaces to get the building a little bit closer? I'm not sure that's the choice.
yeah, I would have, well, in my opinion. And this is just me, this is not the board, just me, that making this. The southern part of this bothers me, because if you have a huge gap between 2 buildings, you're not gonna do it, and then 10 years from now, you're gonna be coming back to us being like, we can't rent out the bottom retail because no one's walking there. Well, yeah, because everyone's spread out as far as they could. So, we'll just. That's really an issue with this. I don't know how you guys feel about this.
We've kind of seen this with all of these, the 4, or maybe it's
We're
even 5. now.
137 and 145 in the last 6 months.
Yeah, and then
The other one
was
was legal.
Point.
So what,
What was the one?
Zero
south of-
place?
No, south of Zero Place, where we gave a height variance for a.
yeah, but that was a height variance, and then they gave up a whole. They didn't have to deal with it because they gave up a bunch of property, the access
Okay.
to the rail trail,
Right.
and then they, so that.
But regardless, my point is all, like, once again, I understand why, like, it's a numbers game, but. You're required to have a certain amount of commercial,
Mhm.
and where you make. In this town, like, for sure, money is not in that, it's in maximizing your residential. And that kind of just feels like what everybody's trying to do, and it kind of feels like we've been helping that in a way. Because if the face of the building is allowed to be brought smaller to fit these circumstances, that's basically what we're doing. Like, if you had to stretch that out another 18 foot, it's 1 more store. Or a slightly bigger area.
And a whole bunch of apartments above it too, because you're gonna get.
Right,
More
and-
apartments
and-
above it.
That's the struggle, because that will require more parking spaces by increasing the building size.
You
Which
can take
might
it off
put
the
us
back
in
end of the other one.
a larger variance requirement for that one.
Take 2 buildings off this one, take 2 buildings off this one, and you put 2 over here and you take them off the back. Not that we're gonna tell you how to do your job, because that would be ridiculous, but it's definitely doable. Ian, do you have anything to add on this? Any questions?
No, not so far. I agree with Sean, remove 2 apartments on the back to extend out. It seems like we're just assessing the issue of expanding the area. And reducing 18 feet is enormous. Adding an entire extra retail spirit space to the front of the space can be an extreme improvement, and I have a much easier time looking at a parking variance route than.
How many parking spaces are you proposing?
It doesn't, once the end is sort of cut off. Problems with that.
168, so
140 without.
so if 3 had to go, you're losing basically 2%, 1.5%.
It's more than that. I don't know how you could, because you can't bump the front of that out without losing some of the spaces. Now we're on the wrong side again, but. I mean, once again, this isn't really
But even if it was five.
my thing, but if you bring this out, you can't just, you're not just losing these. You have to get there.
Yeah, there's a kink in the road, it's
You're losing
more than,
a dozen,
it's more than the width of that building.
you're losing a dozen.
Yeah.
Like probably minimum. What is the situation with the no parking spaces for the section between the building? With the green space?
We're just trying to create a view corridor there towards the rail trail that, you know, you're just not looking through cars, you're just,
Right,
you're seeing nature.
Is it like a patio?
Hmm?
Is it like a patio?
It's more of like there's some little terraces in there. A lot of greenery, we're actually, it's a big bioretention
Like a
area.
landscape garden?
Yeah, it's a big garden, big rain garden, if you will.
and so, yeah, so there aren't parking on either side of the road for that view through in that wedge. Right. Okay.
Yeah, Rob, do you have any questions or anything like that? Any concerns?
No, I mean, the only other question I had is, I mean, would it be helpful for us to get input from the fire department in terms of what they think would be, you know, I know what the code says, but in terms of clearance, just in practical terms, you know, for their apparatus?
Well, they can't lower, like, the minimum of.
No, I'm just saying if they think that the 26 is gonna be enough, or if they do think there's gonna a need for more, if they need to get a ladder truck in there, you know, I just don't know. That's all.
So even more.
Yeah, I'm just asking. Would it be helpful for us in terms of making a decision?
Have you guys been before the planning board yet, or did you need to
Yes.
come?
Yes.
What are they thinking?
They understand our struggles with the code, I guess, with the side yard setbacks.
What,
and-
what, what do they want to see in terms of the building, in terms of the, are they concerned about the parking, and how interested are they maybe, as the chair is saying, maybe?
I can say that the chairman did mention that there's a lot of parking, although we do meet the code. You know, I'm not sure
It's like a.
what that means at this point.
Okay.
They seem to be generally positive towards the building. We didn't have that much of a discussion about the side yard setbacks, other than the fact that we need to either get a variance.
Did they declare lead agency?
Yes,
Or did?
I believe so.
They would have circulated it. Well, if they knew variance was necessary, they would have circulated that to the board, but we didn't get that, did we? Yeah, okay.
I haven't done any, they haven't talked about it.
That,
I'll double check that and see if they did.
I believe that, the decision was made to go to the ZBA after speaking to Alex,
So they may not have even entertained it very much.
after the planning board meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, there's some things that have to go before, it's just the way the stuff's written. Alcohol comes to mind. You can't put a bar anywhere in New Paltz because there's churches everywhere. So even, you can't really write the law. Like, it's just something we always get that in. This is something that we've dealt with the last 3 times. We've always managed to figure something out. Like, we're not gonna block you, but we do want, there's usually some concessions and some things moved around. I think in every case, we've asked for some reasonable
Certainly,
stuff.
our intentions are to make projects work.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's things that are not our responsibility also, and that's something we have to remember too.
Counselor, is this a type 1 action?
Yes.
It is. Wow, okay, so there has to be coordinated review on this for seeker, and so somebody's gotta do that. And I'm not sure if the planning board did it yet, we have to find that out, and you have to do it first. If we're gonna go first.
Yeah, that wasn't at the planning board meeting, and I'm covering for a
And the
copy.
reason, that's interesting, because I was thinking if we were on our own, whether this could be a type 2 action, because there's a provision for, individual lot line, there, individual setback variances, but I honestly don't know what the word individual means there. I was gonna ask council for his opinion on whether these are individual variances or not. But it doesn't matter if it's type one, then we've got, either we or the planning board have to seek on that.
I'm not hating it, but I'm not.
So, and we're gonna have to figure that out.
It's not.
So, let's put that on.
You just look at that, you see that on the left side. On the
And,
north side. you see
and the
that-
questions that this
That's
board,
what
the
we
reason I'm
meant.
getting into that is the questions that this board is asking become secret questions.
Do that, but
How do we want to
also-
handle the question of the impact on the streetscape, in terms of, do we want to try to squeeze it down?
So here, so it's.
Shows that or not? Or is it more important, you know, I don't know the answer, but that's what I'm figuring.
This is.
Maybe a bigger procedure. And the planning board is figuring that out, their lead agency.
That's 150 trees. Yeah, so you got 100 feet of.
You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying, and yeah,
And you're.
this is, go double check if they, I don't think they,
And yeah.
I think what happened is, correct me if I'm wrong, did you just have one meeting with the planning board?
Yeah, just one meeting.
I think they had one introductory meeting, and then after that,
Planning board sent them here.
the planning board sent them here, but I think the planning board asked Alex to verify.
Yeah.
I don't think the planning board.
They declare lead agency.
Right, yeah.
I don't
we reached out to go to Alex.
Yeah, they went, the way I remember what I read was they sent it back to Alex to say, please take a look at this. Alex looked at it and said, yes.
So let me explain this to the board. If indeed this is a type one action under seeker because of the number of apartments or something like that, one of the seeker rules is that for a type one action, there must be a coordinated review. Otherwise, if it was unlisted action, it's allowed, although not favored, for each individual board can do its own review. And that sometimes can help us out because in this case, there's an argument this would be type two. So we would just do it separately, not, uncoordinated. And our little piece of it is type two because it would be arguably, we're still figuring that out. But if it's type one, it doesn't matter because it's got to be coordinated, which means either this board or the planning board is going to have to stipulate a notice of intent to be lead. And one of the two boards will be the lead. And where that becomes important is the board that's not the lead takes a step back while the lead agency conducts a secret review. And the other reason that's important, aside procedurally, is the question the chair was asking, which is how does this fit into the overall goal of the streetscape becomes a seeker issue. So before, if there was no seeker for us, and it was type two, for example, and just on us, we could just decide that in 5 factors and it would just be us. But we may end up, if the planning board, for instance, if the planning board was lead, they would figure that out first. They would crunch that entire issue of how do we handle the question of the required access for the fire trucks and the fact that we're sort of bringing these buildings farther apart.
The ones we've done in the past have all been two.
Yeah,
So has the planning board, you said there's just the one meeting with the planning board, so they really haven't dissected this
haven't
at
done
all?
They took a look, they realized the variance, it's appropriate for the planning board to not move forward with the site plan approval until they know the zoning is right, which means getting variances from the ZBA. The problem is, they may have assumed that we could just do a separate, variance without doing seeker, uncoordinated review, but if this is type one, they can't, and I'll talk to Emily Svensson, who is the counsel for the planning board, my partner, I see her every day, so we can.
Yeah, I don't think,
We should have done that.
I don't think we've ever been lead agency of anything. I can't think of a situation where we've,
You're allowed to though,
yeah, okay.
and the way this, just the procedure. Just even either because you want to be lead or to get the ball rolling, we could, or the planning board will, do something called a notice of intent to be lead. You would do a resolution, do that. Then you'd send out a letter to all the other involved agencies that says, we want to be lead here. And the other agencies can have 30 days to object.
Right.
And the objections could be, if they do it, it could either be contentious or just saying, no, really should be the planning board wants to step in. And then after 30 days, that gets figured out. And that's how, and the point is, if you're in that process, if you receive that letter, or even if you issue the letter, but you'll end up being lead, as long as you're identified, your agency is identified and you are part of that process where you can decide, then the lead agency that's chosen does the secret review and all the other involved agencies don't. We just sit back and wait until they do a negative declaration or a positive declaration. That's sort of the core secret decision, whether or not to do an EIS. Usually most projects get a negative declaration, but the point is in doing that, either stage, either the declaration of significance or if there was an EIS, all the seeker issues get crunched. So if there's a runoff issue, if there's a traffic issue, if there's a visual issue, then the seeker process will tell these guys what they want it to look like, you know, or they can leave that for site plan, but it could be done in seeker. Certainly the issue of the impact on the neighborhood, which could involve the issue that you raised, Mr. Chairman, which was, are we moving, is this building a little bit too far to the north because of the streetscape that we want? How are we going to handle that? That can become a seeker issue. That's why I'm sort of projecting that now. The planning board may end up doing that. If whoever, and as you said, this board typically is not the planning board in this town, in this village, and in most towns typically is.
Yeah.
So ultimately, if this is a type one, which is new to us, because the other 137, 145 were type two, because they may have had fewer apartments, for example. So,
Yeah, this is big.
Yeah.
if that's a situation,
What if any?
we have to do a coordinated review, and the planning board needs to know that. Talk to anything more about that.
David, if I might make a suggestion too, this might be a great application that the applicant requests the board to have a county planning department, what's called a gateway meeting. What the county planning department is able to do is bring all the players together at one meeting. Department of Health, DOT, any others, all at one table. And it's a very productive session where there would be somebody obviously from the ZBA, somebody from the planning board, the attorneys, the consultants. And it's literally, they put the plan down in the middle of the table and go around and discuss it and come to some agreement, and it makes the process go smoother. How that fits into the seeker process is still a little bit murky in this particular application, but it's a way to get everybody at the same table without violating quorum and open meetings laws, because it's specific representatives of each board. As long as you don't have a quorum, it has been now court tested that it is okay.
Didn't you run into a rock? Didn't they run?
We
into-
did, but it was overturned by the appellate court because it was quite frank, and I'm the chair of the county planning board, full disclosure. But it was a terrible decision that was overruled.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
So you
non-seeker,
guys are kosher again.
Yes.
yeah, I checked our planning board application and what we said in our cover letter that it's an unlisted action.
Oh, did-
So if you weren't circulated to, maybe that was why, to allow this
Well,
board
they
to
did-
act.
So it's unlisted,
Before.
so it's not type one.
Yeah, I'm gonna double check on that, but the position that we're taking
Okay,
is it's.
so it's unlisted.
Scratch.
So it
Then,
didn't trigger a type one.
then we can decide to move forward without, without coordinating with the planning board, and if it's unlisted. Well, if it's unlisted before, we can actually argue the overall action's unlisted. This is getting seeker weirdness, but it can be type two for us, because it's just about, it's just, area variances for setback.
So I kind of just want to say,
I can talk to council about that as well.
Yeah,
for my fellow board members to kind of understand, I keep kind of circling back to the same thing. I kind of want to make sure that we're not approving this just to maximize rental space and minimize storefront. I want to make sure that the reason is that it has to happen and not just a benefit.
Well, what you may end up finding when you investigate is that it has to happen up to a certain point and maybe beyond, especially if you did it 70 feet, and maybe beyond that point, beyond that number is because they've configured it. a certain way.
Right, so I know because from doing these and because of the fact that there isn't back access, that there has to be a setback variance because you can't fit 26 feet into 15 feet.
Or 30.
Yeah, or 30, regardless.
And 5 feet is way different than 30 feet.
But what I'm saying is even this distance wouldn't necessarily bother me if I looked at this and it looked like it had to be that way. And that's why the north doesn't bother me as much. But I guess I just wanna be clear to you guys if that's where my head's at, is that I don't want there to be a big gap in the buildings just because it's helpful in the design of the building to minimize the front and to maximize somewhere else.
Did I throw one other concept out there, which is that the building to the south that we're sort of trying to bring things into is added, right? I mean, in terms of the streetscape,
Well, it's a hotel. going to be.
Yeah,
So you've got another proposal there.
Yeah, and one down from that.
I know that 137.
Yeah,
is
so
yeah,
okay.
well, this whole color was getting developed.
And
So
they're
we're trying
all
to-
commercial on the
Well, then,
front.
then it's a thing.
Yeah,
And so you're gonna, and they're all 3-story, they're all similar, block shape, and so. That blocky shape. Looks fine if it's continuous, if it's got a. 100-foot gap between it, then it,
and yeah,
then it starts to look a
There's
little off,
no purpose.
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah, cause Agway is,
Well, the village board is going to have to straighten this out anyway because of the disparity between the written code and the bulk table. Right, it's just written, the bulk table is, in our opinion, written wrong.
Just doing the math in my head, and I don't know this for a fact, but my suspicion is the 15 feet came about of a shared alleyway between two buildings that would then be 30 feet,
right,
which would meet the fire access. I don't know that for a fact, but just doing the math, it seems like that may have been the reasoning behind it.
it's about the only way that you could make it work, and then it's a shared property thing, which gets.
So even,
Especially the property to the south has marshland, right? Was there wetland to the north of that?
I think 131,
yes,
one of those two
Not
buildings.
much, but like 10 feet.
yeah, it was 10 feet of
Yeah.
wetness.
Yeah.
One of them did. In addition to the meeting that Mike was suggesting, we may want to have a meeting between this board, the planning board and the village board, even just maybe just the chairs or something, or a representative, and begin to figure out how do we want to rezone this, rezone the setbacks, because it may not be working the way the village wanted to, because everyone's in here for variances, and the question is how, we've got to grant variances for the fire trucks, should we be
Yeah.
looking at?
Okay. All
Yeah,
right,
maybe like, you're probably right, that the plan was in whatever plan they were trying to come up with, was to keep the buildings close enough together that each building had half of a lane on both sides, giving both of them
That's
access. So that's like, there's wetlands, there's rivers, there's weird bridges.
Yeah.
That just doesn't work.
all right, so we've given you some stuff to think about. We're gonna be setting a public hearing for next week, for next
I
meeting.
wouldn't do that, I mean, do it if you want, that way we'll hear from the public, but, are you asking them to consider changing that south side?
Yes,
Well, then we shouldn't be holding a hearing on this, I don't think.
should what?
I mean, we're comfortable if we do come back with changes and they do work for us to renotice the hearing and have to. But I think we would like to get the public hearing process started with the understanding that if we do make changes, it would have to be renoticed to accurately reflect what the hearing is, so.
I'm actually not, if you, yeah, sure.
That's
Because
Does
we're,
that cause any issues?
I'm not worried about the formality of the public hearing, I'm more worried about whether they can, do the thing, listen to this conversation, go back, speak to their people, sit down with the engineers and do this in 2 weeks.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think public input would be helpful too,
Okay.
because who knows what they're gonna say, and
Yeah.
so it would be better to get it early as opposed to, designing the site and then the public comes. in.
Once we open the public hearing, we're gonna keep it open. Because
Yes.
if we were to close it, we'd be under a significant time constraint to make a decision, so open it if you want, but then that hearing's open.
We would need your updated drawings by the 25th of June, which is 2 weeks from today.
Or we could open the public hearing on this and they could show up with a different set of maps and they're just, we'll be starting a much longer I'm not gonna stand on that principle, but this is gonna be a longer conversation with the public hearing each session.
There may be
I'm trying to
some
get a
changes
sense of
based
the
on what-
process a little bit more in that they're coming to us today for a variance with north and the south. You brought up points in terms of the front that were not part of that. I mean, is that something that the planning board is going to have to get input on as well, or,
Well, so the points I brought up were more not necessarily the front setback, but how the front of the building affects the question that they're asking us. They're asking for more space so the building can be shaped like that. If the building's not shaped like that, then they don't need more space, but is there a way?
A shape like that, you mean with the wings going?
Well, no, I just mean exact dimensions, like if that building was even 8 foot longer, then now they're asking for a 50-foot variance as opposed to a 58-foot variance. Like, so I just, like I said earlier, I don't want
But to see
to.
where the problem there is that if it's 8 foot longer, nothing else changes, you're gonna have more real estate. You're gonna need more parking.
I
And
understand.
they're losing at least, they said, or you and then said, like at least a dozen spaces.
And that's the thing, I'm not necessarily saying that this isn't something that could, I'm definitely not saying that if the planning board likes the way it looks and whatever the case may be, that I would, like, I'm not against this variance. I'm saying that I need to make sure for myself that this is the variance that you need.
And that the planning board wants to see.
If
That,
there,
that's kind of what I'm trying to allude to in the sense like, should we be hearing more about what the planning board has to say about the project before we even think about a variance on this, because they may bring up everything you did and more that may require them.
And that's why I started talking seeker and.
Right, so that's why I'm just like, in a way I feel, and again, it's my first time, I just almost feel like it's putting the cart before the horse in the sense like. Planning board hasn't weighed in on this a lot. Should we be doing it? I don't know, I'll take my cues from you
I
guys.
can sort of answer your question, so. They need the variance as it's presented today.
Okay,
If the planning board, if they go through, if, just say, for example. You guys grant them the variance, they go back to the planning board, they go through the site plan process. More things change, if the variance is different, they're gonna have to come back here again.
okay.
So. Unless they meet the code, in which case you guys are not involved.
So our variant, if just again to understand, and I apologize. So if we were to grant, let's just say hypothetically, say you granted a variance and then they go before the planning board and the planning board asks for all of these other changes to be made, our variance doesn't supersede that.
No,
Okay,
no, if the changes change the variance, then they have to come back
Well,
with the variance.
But it's more than that too. We have, because, especially because of this issue, even if all we were doing is granting a variance and doing it up front, which is what we typically think about doing. We have to go through the factors.
Right.
And to some extent, minimum necessary, et cetera, those factors implicate some of these broader issues, like these design issues, and even to some extent, the streetscape issues. So we'd be making that in a vacuum, and this board might want to know, and I would actually want to know whether it's possible with the procedure is another question. But if I was deciding for this, on this board, sort of what we're gonna do with this, what's the minimum variance necessary? What's the minimum impact on the neighborhood, right? I wanna know what the planning board thought about that. I wanna know what the village board thought about that.
that's my thought. So-
This is my concern. The spirit of the law is we want the buildings to be as close together so that the area is walkable. That's the spirit of this. This is what the law was designed to do. The purpose of all these I realize that the law is very clunky. Okay, that's why you're here. That's why we're very sympathetic. But the intention of the law is to get those buildings as close to each other as possible. And that's not happening here at all. And that's my major concern with this, is that the spirit of the law is not being followed, because we want the place to be walkable. I want people to be able to walk from this building to Zero Place to whatever, get a cup of coffee, be like, oh, I don't like this coffee, I wanna go to the other coffee place. And I want motion of people walking, because that's what's gonna alleviate the traffic, that's what's gonna alleviate all the issues that we have. I'm very pro housing, like we need housing, I'm totally fine with that. But this is not doing that. This is maximizing residential, minimizing commercial, and it's borderline gated community at this point, because you're not accessing the rail trail. You're not accurate, the roads in and roads out are not really, it's an island. So it's not what that's supposed to do.
But they're necessary.
I understand that, but we know there has to be a road
We're
on the
not
left.
trying to create an island here, it's just, it's the-
I know.
we
but-
understand where you're
Not
coming from,
Okay,
but
but
the other fact.
But I think you can do a little better. And I think it's probably, and I think. I totally was like, you have a month to do this, but I was wrong, you have 2 weeks. So we probably do want to kick this can down the road and let you have some, I don't see how you're gonna figure. I mean, maybe you have a crack team, right, of architects ready to go, or you've already thought this through a little bit more. I don't know what your situation is, but. It's probably gonna be a mess and people are gonna come to this. So that public meeting, if we do it, if we don't close it, it's gonna be 2 4-hour meetings. Because people are very upset with what happened with some of the buildings that are happening and they see what's going on and they're gonna have opinions. So I think you probably wanna have your solution a little bit more ironed out before we do a public
Sean, are
hearing.
we in fact getting negative feedback on the variances for 137, 140?
Not for the variances, not on the variances, more, because those buildings aren't, so until those buildings up, no one cares, and then they'll yell at us later.
Okay,
It's more about like everything related to Zero Place.
Like the concepts of the
And
project.
concepts and the project and stuff like that, like, and so, which I get, it's a big box. And it's not. You know, I'm looking at the front of it, and you have a lot of space in between that, which you've beautified it, it looks, I can see some of the good in that, okay, and I also look at that bike lane, and that bike lane is not gonna work. The bike lanes that don't divide physically, people just park right over, all it takes is one person to park wrong. And that bike lane is useless, so I've walked through cities where they do that, and they work if parking enforcement is trying to make money. If parking enforcement is not trying to make money, they don't work at all. So, and I mean, I can understand why you'd want to have parking there, because if you have retail, that would be awesome to have. You know, especially if it was metered and half-hour parking only, and that's where the people come in to get their cup of coffee, get their coffee and leave. That would be ideal. I'm getting what some of the stuff you're getting. I like a lot of it, but some of it I'm.
Mr.
very
Chair, can I
concerned
make
about.
a suggestion / offer on this
Sure.
issue? I'm thinking that maybe a good procedure would be, I can speak to Emily, who again represents the planning board, and suggest to her that the planning board consider doing this as a coordinated review. That's actually the best way to do it.
Okay.
And then declaring lead agency. And that way, this issue that's troubling you, and I think correctly, the planning board would have to deal with it, and this board could be involved in that. We're an involved agency.
Yeah.
And then the planning board would be the ones to just factor everything in. And the way this works procedurally is that we have to do our variance before they can get their site plan approval. But if there was a coordinated review and the planning board would lead, the planning board would do the secret review before we give our variance. We would not be giving the variance until they do the seat. So and this happens, it sounds bizarre, but it happens a lot. It gets bounced back to the planning board. They do whatever needs to be done in seeker, the whole 9 yards, traffic, visual, and the issue of the community and everything else. They would presumably, we don't know, but if they gave a neg deck, then at that point, we would come back to us for the variance. But at that point, we would have just an enormous amount of guidance from the planning
That
board.
would also bring the DOT into the discussion.
Yeah, so
Well,
the negative declaration, if that's what it came down to, would not be just one bare bones document. It would be a significant, even without an EIS, it comes out to a significant study on all the issues that are raised. This would probably be one of those issues. So we would be getting a document from them that not only would be guidance for us, but it would actually govern what we do and be very helpful. So and this is a very standard procedure, by the way. And if it was a type 1 action, it would be a necessary procedure, but it's certainly standard and even recommended for an unlisted action, in particular, that effect that this board doesn't typically do that sort of broader environmental review. So I can have that conversation with Emily tomorrow and see if she wants to go in that direction.
Yeah, and just generally, when you need a variance, developers, including us, would prefer to have some surety that we can have a project, meaning we have the variances. That's why we would, I understand what council's saying, but we would still prefer to move forward with this board first, because under the process that he's talking about, we could be going through the secret review for a year or two, who knows, depending on how much the public
That's
opposition is,
perfectly legitimate.
without any guarantee that when we come back to you, it's going to be the same board that's sitting in front of us now saying, we have some comments, but we're willing to consider it.
If you were to.
I just want to point out to the
Yeah.
council, this board is going to be sympathetic toward developing this site and moving in that area and doing
Yeah.
what's necessary. Just be a question of getting guidance from the agency. that would be able to-
I think your best bet, and you guys can jump in at any moment, would be to make that better.
Yeah,
So,
so,
because if that was better, this would be a different conversation.
so why
It's
don't,
not better, it needs to be better.
why don't we, so, yeah, of course.
So why don't we meet again in 2 weeks? You guys
And
can
we'll come back
adjourn
with
it,
something different.
and you'll come back with something better.
Do you,
Okay.
we're having a special meeting in 2 weeks to consider?
No, I'm
Something every
sorry.
2 weeks and
I
then
did
you
say
look
2
at.
weeks, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
the next.
They
board
would have 2 weeks to get it in and.
Yeah,
you'll come back.
I'm looking, and I was assuming a month, that's on me, I was like, a month, you can totally do this in a month, but in 2 weeks, you're not gonna be able to do it.
That was my original thought.
You're gonna do it poorly, it's gonna look horrible, and someone needs to sit down with a lot of coffee. And figure this out, this is several cups of coffee.
You want to try to do something, come back before the board?
Yeah,
Okay, so we'll hold it on the public hearing, you wanna come back and, if you can get it done in 2 weeks, then we'll see you next month, or otherwise we'll kick it down to August then.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
so
we had-
after 25th, if we don't feel like we're in a position to
Yeah, we can
have a plan that is ready for you to look at, then we would just not submit it at that time.
Yes, and could they come in and show it to us if they didn't get the plans?
If this board is sitting together, then we'll have to have a special meeting, we can do that.
No, I'm saying next month.
If they don't.
If
If they don't get it in 2 weeks, but they have it done in 4 weeks.
This is up to your procedures, I mean, usually boards in your situation, you wanna see something a certain amount of time in advance, so you have time to read it, and but the answer is that that's what this, if you want to, in essence, supersede your own procedures, the answer is you can do that.
Okay, I would
It's gonna bust
be
your chops.
comfortable with that brain. Can you get it in 3 weeks? I'll give you an extra week. Would that be doable or is that not doable?
I mean,
Or
My,
do you want-
my side of this, the civil engineering side,
Yeah,
I believe is. I don't wanna say it's easier, but it takes less time than what the architect is gonna have to go through and figure out how the interior works out and,
okay.
I'd like to say we could do that, but I don't wanna speak for other designers.
Yeah.
It's your call, and you can see what they have, and if you believe it's enough to put forward, then.
Yeah,
we
I'll
can-
leave it up to you guys.
They both-
If you have something in a month and you bring it in, Cody is very good at dissecting plans. I'm decent at it. And so if you have something, great. If you need more time, you take your time. This is not gonna, you're not gonna.
2 weeks doesn't bother me as much as trying to make.
Yeah, I'd rather you do a better job and hand it in late than hand it in early and we're just gonna do this again.
So to be clear, the basic goal of the board is to try to close some of that space on the southern end of the property, boil down to one sentence. And secondarily, it may be to maybe bring a little bit more retail, perhaps a little bit less residential, that would be a preference, but fundamentally it's just to bring it down a little bit farther south.
And if it was less of an island. And I know it's not your fault. I totally understand the property, but if there was an escape route to the rail trail, then you're no longer an island. And now you're opening up the space.
Yeah,
So there are ways to make this less of an island than it is.
we're certainly trying to make sure that this can work. I wanna reiterate that like. We're saying these things because these are the things that have worked very close to you and the building.
Understood.
All right,
If I could just ask the applicant or your representatives from a procedural standpoint, if you can send a withdrawal of the challenge.
Sure.
Officially, so then we'll move forward with the area variance application. And then we'll go from there.
easy. Okay, any questions? Everyone's good?
Do we have gentlemen at cards or opinions, just so I can get the spelling?
Okay, I'd like to have a motion to close the meeting.
You wanna approve
Do
minutes?
you want to,
So.
you want to vote on the minutes or hold on?
No, it's not here.
I know.
So,
So we'll put this together on the secret.
Yeah, I'll double check.
okay, so we're gonna close, I motion to close the meeting. Second. Okay, cool. Vote, aye, meeting's closed. Have a great day.
All right, thank
I'm
you.
sorry.
Thank you.
No problem. Oh, that's, is your name really Buddy?
Charles,
Okay, is that your nickname?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Just-
thank you for your
Thanks,
time, guys. I appreciate all your comments. Understood.
Okay,
Sean, I want to ask you one question
can
offline.
you kill the TV?
Yeah, let me,